I sent my dad a private text, confessing everything I was struggling with. He screenshot every message and forwarded them to our family group chat with a comment, "See what I deal with." My own sister replied with laughing emojis. So I sent one final message to them all, a message containing the secret my father was most desperate to keep. This is a story about the moment a family's private language of care becomes a weapon. About what happens when the person you're supposed to trust with your weakest moments uses them to mock you in front of everyone you know. I'm going to show you how a single screenshot can tear a lifetime of loyalty apart, and what it costs to finally fight back with the only truth they never wanted you to tell. To understand why that final text was a detonation, you have to understand the quiet contract I thought we had. My dad wasn't just my father. For years, he was my secret keeper. I was 24, living alone for the first time in a city that felt 3 sizes too big. My apartment was a 500-square-foot box with a view of a brick wall, and the silence there had a different texture than any I'd known. It was the silence of bills piling up on the counter, of my phone not buzzing, of figuring out what to eat when even groceries felt like a luxury. My family lived 45 minutes away, in the suburban house I grew up in. The distance felt both infinite and not far enough. On paper, we were close. We had a family group chat, The Herd, a relic from when my sister Jessica and I were in high school. It was mostly used for logistics. What time is dinner on Sunday? Did someone take the blue umbrella? Happy birthday with a cake emoji. The deeper stuff, the real stuff, happened in private messages, especially between me and my dad. That was our thing. He was the one I'd text when I was overwhelmed. A simple, "Hey, work was brutal today," or "I think my car is making a weird noise again." He'd always write back, sometimes with advice, sometimes just with a listening ear emoji. It felt like a life raft. In a family where my sister Jessica was the undisputed star, the one with the curated Instagram, the exciting job in marketing, the engagement ring that caught the light just so, these texts were my corner of his attention. A small, private room in a house where all the other doors seemed to lead to her. Jessica and I are 18 months apart, but we might as well be from different planets. Where I was pragmatic, she was performative. Where I saved, she spent. Our parents, especially my dad, had always framed this not as favoritism, but as catering to different needs. Jessica needed encouragement, visibility, applause. I was low maintenance. I was the strong one. They said it like it was a compliment. It took me most of my life to hear the subtext, "You will not be a priority." The evidence was in the archive. There's a photo from my college graduation. My mom, my dad, Jessica, and me. Jessica is wearing a brand new designer dress, a gift for coming to support me. I'm in my cap and gown, holding my diploma. My dad's arm is around Jessica's shoulders. He's looking at the camera, but his body is angled toward her. I am literally on the outskirts of the frame. I used to think I was imagining the imbalance. Then I'd look at the pictures. The story was right there. So those private texts to my dad became my loophole. If I couldn't have the public support, I'd take the confidential one. It felt like a mature, adult solution. I was meeting him where he was, and for a long time, it worked. The cracks started as hairline fractures, small things. I'd mention in a private text that I was stressed about a doctor's appointment. 2 days later, my mom would call out of the blue and ask, "So, what did the doctor say?" with a pointed concern that felt more like surveillance than care. I'd brush it off. "He's just worried," I'd tell myself. "He's sharing with mom because he doesn't know how to help." Then it was money. I lost a freelance client last fall, and my budget, which was already tight, snapped. I agonized for a week before texting my dad. I kept it vague. "Freelance work dried up. Going to be a lean few months. Nothing to worry about, just wanted you to know." His reply was immediate and kind. "We've all been there. You're resilient. You'll figure it out." It felt supportive. A week later, a check for $200 arrived in the mail from my parents with a sticky note. "For groceries, no payback needed." I was touched, but also confused. I hadn't asked for money. I just wanted him to know I was struggling. I deposited the check and texted a thank you. He wrote back, "Of course. Jessica said you'd be too proud to ask, so we just sent it." That stopped me cold. Jessica knew. I'd told him that in confidence. Suddenly, the kindness felt airy, like it had been passed through a committee. I let it go. Family helps family, right? But the pattern kept etching itself deeper. A private worry about a friend drifting away would resurface as a joke from Jessica at Sunday dinner. Heard you're having friend drama. Want me to give you some tips? A late-night text to my dad about feeling lonely in the city would be met with a forwarded article from my mom the next day. 10 ways to beat loneliness. 7 is a game changer. Each time, I'd feel a small, hot pinprick of betrayal, followed immediately by a flood of guilt. Was I being secretive? Were they just trying to help? Maybe this was what a close, involved family looked like, and my desire for a private inner life was the problem. The pressure cooker of my own life kept turning up the heat. My car died for good. The repair estimate was more than the car was worth. My stable part-time job cut my hours. The persistent ache in my wrist that I'd ignored for months was diagnosed as a repetitive strain injury that required physical therapy I couldn't afford. The walls of my little apartment started to feel like they were breathing in, closer every day. One Tuesday night, it all crested. I was sitting on my floor, back against the couch, staring at a spreadsheet of my debts. The numbers were static, but in my head they were screaming. The silence of the apartment wasn't peaceful anymore. It was accusatory. I felt utterly, profoundly alone. And in that moment, the person I wanted was my dad. Not to solve it, just to witness it. To see me, just once, not as the strong one who would figure it out, but as a person who was quietly drowning. I picked up my phone. My thumbs moved almost on their own, typing not a curated summary, but a raw, unfiltered outpouring. I told him about the car, the sheer panic of being without transportation. I told him about the job, the terrifying dip in income. I confessed the deep, gnawing loneliness of a city where I knew hundreds of people, but had no one to call at 2 a.m. I detailed the wrist pain, the fear that my body was failing me too. I didn't ask for anything. I just said, "This is what it feels like right now. This is the weight. I just needed you to know." I took a breath, my finger hovering over the send button. This was the most vulnerable I had ever been with him. It was a document of my breaking points. And then I sent it. For an hour, there was no response. The silence felt heavier than before. Then my phone buzzed, not a private text back, a notification from the family group chat, The Herd. My heart sank before I even opened it. It was a screenshot of my entire text block, every desperate private word I had sent him. Above it, my father had written a single scathing line, "See what I deal with." A second later, another notification. A reply from my sister, Jessica. It was just 3 emojis. The crying, laughing face. The face with tears of joy. The rolling on the floor, laughing face. I stared at the screen. The words I had written, my private pain, were now pinned up in a public square for my family to gawk at. My father had not just violated my trust. He had framed my vulnerability as a burden, as drama he had to deal with. And my sister's laughter was the seal on the betrayal. It was the ultimate confirmation of my place, not as a daughter in distress, but as a punchline. In that moment, something in me didn't break. It crystallized. The guilt evaporated, burned away by a cold, clear fury. They wanted to make my private pain a public spectacle. Fine. I opened the group chat. I watched the little red receipts pop up next to my father's screenshot and Jessica's laugh. They were all there, watching. My mom, probably mortified but silent. Jessica, smug. My dad, waiting for what? An apology for burdening him. My fingers were steady. I typed one sentence. It contained a name, a date, and an amount of money. It was the secret my father had begged me to take to my grave 2 years ago, a secret that would unravel the perfect image he curated for our family and for the community. I didn't hesitate. I hit send. The message I sent was just 9 words. The $50,000 for Jessica's wedding came from the business account, not Grandma's inheritance. Then I turned my phone off. I placed the phone face down on my coffee table, walked to my kitchen, and poured a glass of water. My hands were perfectly steady. The screaming anxiety from an hour before was gone, replaced by a cold, surgical calm. I knew exactly what I had just done. I had pulled the pin on a grenade and tossed it into the center of my family's mythology. For 2 years, that secret had lived in a locked box in my mind. My father had taken me out to lunch, a rare one-on-one, the week after my grandmother passed away. He was agitated, not sad. Over a plate of uneaten fries, he laid it out. His small construction business was in trouble. Cash flow was a problem. But Jessica's wedding was in 6 months, and she had her heart set on a venue that cost more than my entire college education. My mother's expectations were sky high. He couldn't say no. So he'd taken a short-term loan from the business account. He told my mother and Jessica that it was an early disbursement from my grandmother's estate, a special gift for her first grandchild's wedding. The truth was, Grandma had left most of her money in a trust, and the executors wouldn't release a cent until the following year. He'd forged paperwork, he said. He just needed to cover it back before the annual audit in 11 months. He made me swear on my mother's health not to tell a soul. Your mother would never understand the pressure, he'd said, gripping my wrist. Jessica would be devastated. You're the only one who can handle knowing this. You're strong. He'd used my assigned role, the strong one, as the very reason to burden me with his crime. I had carried that lie watching Jessica post pictures of floral mock-ups and cake tastings, feeling the weight of that $50,000 every time I saw her smile. For an hour, my apartment was silent. No buzzing, no calls, just the hum of the refrigerator. I knew what was happening 45 minutes away. The message had been read by everyone. My mother, the meticulous bookkeeper who handled the household finances. Jessica, the bride who believed her dream was a posthumous gift from her beloved grandma. My dad, the man who had just been exposed as a liar and a thief, all in one sentence. When I finally turned my phone back on, it was a nuclear reactor melting down. Missed calls stacked like dominoes, 12 from my dad, 8 from my mom, 3 from Jessica. The notifications for the family group chat were in the hundreds. I didn't open it. I opened the string of private texts from my dad. They were a journey through the stages of grief in reverse. The first one, 2 minutes after my message. Call me now. 5 minutes. What have you done? Delete that. 10 minutes. You have no idea what you're talking about. You're confused. 15 minutes. Your mother is hysterical. Call her and tell her you made a horrible mistake. 20 minutes. The tone shifted. Please, we can fix this. Just say you were upset and you lied. The last one, sent 45 minutes after my text, was just 4 words. You have ruined everything. Then a new text popped up, not from my dad, from my sister, Jessica. It wasn't in the group chat. It was private. What the actual hell is wrong with you? I wrote back, my fingers still steady. Ask Dad. He's the one who stole the money and used a dead woman to cover it. The 3 typing dots appeared, disappeared, reappeared for a full minute. Then her reply came. He told me it was a gift from Grandma. He showed me the paperwork. He showed you a forgery, I responded. Check the trust documents. Call the executor, Uncle Mark. Do your own math, Jessica. The business account statements are in the filing cabinet in Dad's office. Bottom drawer under the insurance policies. The withdrawal is dated March 14th last year, the same week you put the deposit on the vineyard. The typing dots froze, then stopped. She was gone. My phone rang. It was my mother. I let it go to voicemail. She called again, and again. On the 4th ring, I answered. I didn't say hello. Her voice was a ragged whisper, choked with tears I'd never heard before. Is it true? Yes, I said simply. A shattered sob came through the line. Why would he? How could he? And you knew. You knew for 2 years and you didn't tell me. There it was, the blame already shifting, not toward the person who committed the act, but toward the person who kept the secret he forced on them. He made me swear not to, I said, my voice flat. He said you couldn't handle it. I'm his wife, she screamed, the whisper gone. You should have come to me. You let me live a lie. You let Jessica believe a lie. And he let you both believe a lie, I countered, but the logic was already lost in the emotional tsunami. I could hear my father yelling in the background, distant but furious. My mother was crying too hard to speak. The call disconnected. This was the first domino, the personal fallout, but the secret I'd revealed wasn't just a family lie. It was a financial crime. My father's business, Henderson & Sons Construction, wasn't a publicly traded company, but it had partners. Silent investors. My uncle, my dad's younger brother, was one. He owned 30%. And that business account wasn't my father's personal piggy bank. It was the operating account for payroll, materials, taxes. I knew this because I was the one who had helped my mom organize the home office the summer after high school. I'd seen the structure. I knew the rules. At 10:17 that night, my phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. I answered, bracing for more family fury. A man's voice, calm and weary, said, "Mallory, it's your Uncle Mark," the executor of my grandmother's estate. My dad's older brother, the family's reluctant patriarch. "Hi, Uncle Mark," I said, my calm finally wavering. "I just got off the phone with your mother, and then with my brother. I need you to tell me directly from you what you said in that text, word for word." I repeated the 9 words. There was a long, heavy silence on the other end of the line. "He told them it was from the trust," he stated, more to himself than to me. "Yes." And he showed them falsified distribution papers. "That's what he told me." Another pause. I could hear him rubbing his forehead. "Your father has made some questionable decisions in the past, but this is embezzlement, Mallory. This is fraud. The business has 3 other investors besides me. If they find out he's using operating capital for personal." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. The stakes had just escalated from a family spat to a potential lawsuit, maybe even criminal charges. "Your mother is claiming you're lying because you're jealous of Jessica," he said, his tone neutral, probing. "Check the books, Uncle Mark," I said, a sudden fatigue washing over me. "The answer is in the books and in the trust records. The truth doesn't care about anyone's feelings." He sighed, a sound of profound disappointment. "I'll be in town tomorrow. Don't talk to anyone else about this, not until I've seen the paperwork." The call ended. I was now a witness in a family financial investigation. The private betrayal had become a corporate liability. But the audience for my revelation wasn't just my family and the business. There was a wider court of public opinion. Jessica's wedding had been a local society page event. The story of the generous grandmother's final gift had been a poignant detail in the write-up. Jessica had even given an interview to a wedding blog about honoring family legacy. That article was still live, complete with a photo of her holding a framed picture of my grandmother. The next morning, I awoke not to silence, but to a different kind of noise. My personal social media was flooded, not with direct messages, but with tags and comments on old photos. Jessica had gone nuclear. She hadn't posted about the secret directly, that would be too crass, but she had posted a series of vague, devastating stories. A black screen with white text. "When you find out your own family is capable of such calculated cruelty." Another. "Grief is hard enough without someone weaponizing your memories." A photo of her wedding dress, hanging in its bag with the caption, "Tainted, all of it." Her followers, a mix of local friends and aspiring influencers, flooded the comments with support. "Who did this to you? Family can be so toxic. Sending love, you don't deserve this." She was crafting the narrative in real time. She was the victim, her beautiful wedding memory had been attacked, and I was the shadowy, jealous culprit. My phone started ringing with numbers I didn't recognize. Friends of my parents, asking if everything was okay. A former high school friend of Jessica's, messaging me, "Wow, I always knew you were messed up, but this is low." The private family grenade had shrapnel flying into my public life. I didn't engage. I screenshotted every post, every comment, every venomous message. I compiled them in a folder. This was the second domino, the social fallout. My sister was using her platform to try and bury me under a landslide of public opinion, to preemptively discredit anything I might say. It was late afternoon when the third domino began to teeter. My Uncle Mark called again. His voice was granite. "I've seen the statements," he said. "The withdrawal is there. 50,000 March 14th, categorized as materials vineyard project. There is no vineyard project in our work ledger for last year. I've also spoken to the Trust's bank. No disbursements were made until this January." He took a sharp breath. "I confronted your father. He broke down. He admitted it. He said he was going to pay it back with a big contract that fell through. He hasn't paid back a cent." The confirmation should have felt like victory. It just felt hollow. "What happens now?" I asked. "Now," Uncle Mark said, I have a fiduciary duty to the other investors. I have to inform them. They will likely demand immediate repayment and possibly his removal from operating control. This will likely bankrupt the business. And your father, there could be legal repercussions." He paused. "Your mother is not taking my calls. Jessica believes I'm part of your conspiracy." "Mallory, I need to know. Why now? After 2 years of silence, why did you decide to reveal this tonight?" This was the pivot, the moment the assumption that this was simple, petty revenge could be reframed. I looked at the screenshot still open on my laptop, the one of my father's message in the group chat. "See what I deal with." Below it, Jessica's laughing emojis. "He forwarded my private messages to the whole family," I said, my voice quiet but clear. "Messages where I told him I was drowning in debt, that I was scared, that I felt alone. He presented my pain as a burden he had to deal with." And my sister laughed. "So I showed them what a real burden looks like. I showed them the one they've been smiling about for a year." The line was silent. For so long, I thought we'd been disconnected. "I see," Uncle Mark said finally, and his tone had changed. It wasn't warmer, but it was understanding. "So this wasn't an attack on Jessica's wedding. It was a counterattack on a public humiliation." "It was the truth," I corrected. "The truth they built their happiness on a lie and my silence on a threat. I'm done being the strong one who carries their secrets and my pain quietly. He wanted to make my struggle public. Fine. Now his is too." Later that evening, as I was trying to eat some toast, my door buzzer rang. The intercom in my apartment building. I wasn't expecting anyone. I walked over, my heart a drum in my chest, and pressed the talk button. "Hello." No voice answered at first. Then a shaky, tear-filled breath. It was my mother. "Mallory, it's me. Please let me up. We need to talk. Your father, he's gone." I buzzed her up. The woman who walked through my door wasn't my mother. She was a ghost of her, makeup streaked, holding herself like she might fracture. She didn't hug me. She just stood in the middle of my living room, staring at the blank TV screen as if it held answers. "Gone where?" I asked, my voice sounding strange in the quiet apartment. She shook her head, a quick, bird-like motion. "He left after the fight with Mark. He threw his phone against the wall, screamed that everyone had turned on him, and walked out. That was 4 hours ago. He's not answering. His car is gone." She finally looked at me, her eyes full of a terrible, confused accusation. "He's never done this. Even when things were bad, he never just left." I offered her the glass of water I was holding. She took it but didn't drink. "Sit down, Mom." She sat on the very edge of my couch, back straight, as if touching too much of my life would contaminate her further. "Mark says it's true, all of it. He showed me the bank transfers, the fake trust document." Her voice broke. "He's been lying to me for over a year. He let me plan that wedding, let me cry happy tears thinking my mother had provided for it, and it was all stolen. From his own company, from us." This was the core of her devastation. Not just the betrayal, but the desecration of a sacred memory. Her grief was fresh, raw, and currently directionless. "Why did you come here, Mom?" I asked softly. Not to be cruel, but because I needed to know. Was I the confessional or the next target? She looked down at her hands, twisting the wedding ring she still wore. "Because Jessica won't stop screaming. She's on the phone with lawyers. She's talking about suing your father for emotional distress and fraudulent inducement. She says her marriage is built on a lie and she wants it annulled. She's hysterical. I can't be there with that right now." The irony was so thick it choked the room. Jessica, the golden child, was now weaponizing her victimhood with legal threats against the very father who bankrupted himself for her fantasy. My mother had fled the fallout of her favored child to seek shelter with the neglected one. The universe had a vicious sense of humor. "And you?" my mother asked, that familiar probing tone returning beneath the tears. "What do you want, Mallory? You got your revenge. You blew up our lives. What's next for you?" It was the question I'd been avoiding. "I want to not be the family secret keeper anymore," I said. "I want to not have my pain used as a punchline. I didn't do this to get anything. I did it because I had nothing left to lose." She studied me for a long moment, and I saw a flicker of something unfamiliar in her eyes. Not understanding, but a dawning, horrifying recognition. "You really have been alone, haven't you?" she whispered. All those texts, you weren't just complaining. You were asking for help. And she couldn't finish. The door to my apartment building buzzed again. We both jumped. My mother's eyes went wide with panic. Is that him? I walked to the intercom. Yes. Mallory Henderson, package delivery, need a signature. It was a lie. I knew it immediately. The voice was too formal, too stiff. But a deeper, colder part of me wanted to see who it was, to face whatever came next. I'll be right down. Don't, my mother hissed, but I was already pulling on a jacket. Lock the door behind me, I said and left. In the dimly lit lobby stood a man in a navy pea coat, not a uniform. He was in his late 40s with a tired, serious face. He held no package. Mallory Henderson. Who are you? He produced a business card. David Chen. I'm a forensic accountant retained by the other investors in Henderson and Sons. Your Uncle Mark suggested I speak with you. I understand you have some knowledge of the company's financial irregularities. This was it. The institutional domino was falling faster than I'd imagined. Uncle Mark hadn't just informed the investors, he'd brought in a bloodhound. We can talk here, I said, crossing my arms. He nodded, unfazed. The $50,000 withdrawal you referenced. Your uncle provided the records. My preliminary review has uncovered additional discrepancies. Larger sums, moved over the past 3 years, categorized under fictitious project names, or written off as material loss. We're looking at a total misappropriation that could exceed $200,000. The number hung in the air between us. 200,000. It wasn't just a wedding, it was a second life. He's been siphoning from the company, I stated, the pieces clicking into an uglier picture. It appears so, Chen said, his voice devoid of judgment. The vineyard project was just one line item. There's also lakeside renovation, municipal permit fees, historical preservation grant all shells. The money trail disappears into personal accounts, then reemerges as cash. Some of it likely funded your sister's lifestyle. Some of it we don't know yet. He looked at me carefully. You mentioned in your communication with your uncle that your father confessed to you 2 years ago. Did he give you any details? Names of accounts? Any records? No, I said. Just the confession, and a threat wrapped in a compliment to keep me quiet. Chen nodded, making a note on his phone. Your cooperation is appreciated. This will likely become a legal matter. You may be subpoenaed. I would advise you not to discuss the specifics with anyone else, including family members. His eyes flicked toward the stairwell, where my mother waited. The less they know, the cleaner the investigation. He left as quietly as he arrived. I stood in the lobby, the weight of his words crushing the last of my cold fury. This wasn't a family secret anymore. It was a white-collar crime scene, and I had just given the police the address. When I returned, my mother was standing by the window. Who was it? She asked, her voice thin. The end of the life you know, I answered, no energy left for softness. The investors have a forensic accountant. Dad didn't just take $50,000 for the wedding. He's been stealing for years, maybe $200,000 total. The color drained from her face completely. She groped for the back of the couch to steady herself. 200, but that's the business, our house. Might be collateral, I finished. The company will fold. The investors will sue. There might be criminal charges. She slid down onto the floor, back against the couch, and began to cry silently, great heaving sobs that had no sound. This was the "it gets worse" moment. The single betrayal had metastasized into a systemic disease that was about to consume everything they owned. My phone, which had been blessedly quiet, lit up. Not a call. A calendar notification. A shared family calendar I'd forgotten to delete. It was a reminder for tomorrow. Jessica meeting with Bloom Bridal Magazine feature interview. A hysterical laugh bubbled in my throat. In the midst of this, Jessica was still trying to be an influencer, still curating her perfect life. But then I remembered her social media posts, her vague victim narrative. She was probably using this family trauma as a new angle for her brand. The thought made me sick. I sat on the floor next to my mother, not touching her. You can stay here tonight, I said. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't sympathy, it was simple logistics. She had nowhere else to go. She just cried harder. The next 72 hours were a blur of grim progress. My father did not return. My mother stayed on my couch, a silent, shell-shocked presence. Uncle Mark called daily with updates. The other investors were apoplectic. They were filing a civil suit and had reported their findings to the state's attorney general for possible criminal investigation. The business was effectively frozen. Jessica, true to form, escalated. Her vague posting turned into a full-blown, heartbroken daughter campaign. She did the interview with Bloom magazine, and somehow the story morphed. It was no longer about a lavish wedding, but about the strength it takes to rebuild when family betrayals shatter your foundation. She was monetizing the catastrophe. She even changed her Instagram bio to Survivor Truth Teller Healing. Then, on the third day, she played her masterstroke. A certified letter arrived at my apartment, addressed to me. It was from a law firm, not for my father, for me. Jessica was suing me for defamation and intentional infliction of emotional distress. Her legal argument, as laid out in the letter, was ingenious and venomous. She claimed that my text message was a knowingly false and malicious statement designed to destroy her reputation and emotional well-being. That my jealousy and mental instability, citing my private texts about loneliness and anxiety as evidence, had driven me to fabricate a horrific lie about our father, which in turn had caused her severe public humiliation and the destruction of her marital bliss. She demanded a public retraction, a formal apology posted on my social media, and significant monetary damages. She was using the very vulnerability my father had weaponized against me as proof of my unreliability. She had taken my pain, repackaged it as insanity, and was now using it as a legal cudgel. The audacity was breathtaking. I showed the letter to my mother. She read it, her hands trembling, and then she did something unexpected. She started laughing, a dry, hollow, broken sound. "She's suing you," she whispered, tears streaming down her face again, but these were different. "Her father is missing, the family is bankrupt, and she's suing her sister for telling the truth." She looked at me, and for the first time, I saw the scales fall from her eyes completely. She saw the monster she had helped create. "Don't you dare give her a cent," my mother said, her voice suddenly clear and sharp. "I will testify. I will show them the bank records Mark gave me. I will tell them about the fake document. I am her mother, and I will tell everyone what her father did for her." It was the first time she had chosen a side, and it was mine. Not out of love for me, but out of a final, furious rejection of the fantasy Jessica was still trying to sell. But the battle lines were now formal. It was no longer a family group chat war. It was Henderson versus Henderson, with court dates and depositions. The private text had sparked a financial investigation and now a sibling lawsuit. The fallout had its own fallout, like a set of poisonous Russian dolls. The final piece fell into place a week later. My father was found, not by us but by a state trooper. He was in a motel 200 miles away, living on cash. He hadn't killed himself. He hadn't started a new life. He was just hiding, a scared man waiting for the walls to stop caving in. The trooper brought him in because his car registration had expired. When they ran his name, the flags from the Attorney General's investigation popped up. He was arrested on suspicion of embezzlement and fraud. He sat in a county jail, awaiting arraignment, while his daughters were now on opposite sides of a civil lawsuit, and his wife was sleeping on his estranged daughter's couch. I visited him once. He looked small behind the glass, wearing a standard-issue jumpsuit. He wouldn't meet my eyes. "Why did you send that screenshot, Dad?" I asked, the original wound still raw beneath all the new layers of devastation. He finally looked up, his eyes red-rimmed and empty. "I was frustrated," he mumbled. "You were always so heavy. Jessica was easy. She was light. I just wanted them to see that you were hard work. I wanted them to feel sorry for me for a minute." There was no grand malice, no calculated evil. Just the petty, exhausted reflex of a man who resented the child who needed something real from him, and who used her vulnerability to score points in a game she didn't even know she was playing. His confession was somehow worse than any villainous plot. It was pathetic. I stood up to leave. "Mallory," he said, his voice cracking, Tell them I'm sorry." I looked at him, this man who had shaped my world with his neglect and his lies. "Tell them yourself," I said, and I walked out. I had entered this fight with a single text, a knife thrown in the dark. Now I stood in the wreckage, holding a defamation lawsuit from my sister, supporting my mother, and dealing with the looming specter of my father's criminal trial. The strong one was still carrying the weight, but this time I wasn't carrying it in silence. I was carrying it straight into the light, and I was ready to set it down. Walking out of that jail, I didn't feel triumph. I didn't feel guilt. I felt a profound, staggering quiet. The screaming was over. Now came the settling of dust. My mother stayed with me for 6 weeks. It was the longest continuous time we'd spent together since I was a teenager. It wasn't a Hallmark movie. It was awkward and painful, full of landmines of memory and fresh grief. But we established a rhythm. She got a job as a receptionist at a local dentist's office, a steep fall from being the wife of a business owner, but it gave her a schedule, a purpose, and her own money. She paid me a small amount of rent, which I accepted after one argument. She needed the dignity of contributing. I needed the boundary. We didn't talk about my father much. We didn't talk about Jessica at all. But sometimes, late at night, she'd sit at my kitchen table and stare into a cup of tea and say things like, "I should have seen it. The new tools he never brought to job sites. The vague answers about big contracts." Or, "I always thought you were just quieter. I didn't know we'd made you silent." There was no redemption in these moments, only a slow, excruciating accounting. I learned that healing isn't a hug. It's a forensic audit of your own blindness. The legal machinery ground forward with a slow, impersonal force. My father, faced with the forensic accountant's report and the threat of a protracted trial, took a plea deal. He pleaded guilty to 1 count of wire fraud and 1 count of falsifying business records. The sentence was 18 months in a minimum security prison, followed by 3 years of probation. He was also ordered to pay restitution of $180,000, a sum he would likely be paying for the rest of his life. The Henderson and Sons sign was taken down. The assets were liquidated to pay back the investors a fraction of what they'd lost. The family home was sold to cover legal fees and a chunk of the restitution. My mother signed the papers without a single tear. Jessica's defamation lawsuit against me was the next domino to fall. Her lawyer, a slick man who seemed to think he was starring in a legal drama, had pushed forward aggressively. My lawyer, a no-nonsense woman named of my Uncle Mark had recommended, met their theatrics with a pile of evidence. We had the forensic report. We had my mother's affidavit confirming the fraud. We had the bank records. We even had a sworn statement from the executor, Uncle Mark, about the trust timeline. At the pretrial hearing, the judge, a woman with a reputation for zero tolerance of frivolity, reviewed the motion to dismiss. She listened to Jessica's lawyer claim my text was a malicious fabrication. Then she looked at our evidence. She dismissed the case with prejudice, meaning Jessica could not refile. She called the lawsuit a transparent attempt to weaponize the legal system to punish a truth-teller, and ordered Jessica to pay a portion of my legal fees. Jessica stormed out of the courtroom, her husband trailing behind her, looking embarrassed. It was the last time I saw her in person. The fallout for Jessica was not legal, but social. The heartbroken survivor narrative she'd built began to crack under the weight of public facts. The Bloom magazine article came out, but the editor, having gotten wind of the dismissed lawsuit, added a stark editor's note at the top. This interview was conducted prior to the resolution of legal proceedings involving the subject's family. It was the kiss of death. Her engagement plummeted. Brands dropped her. The local society that had adored her now whispered about that messy family. She and her husband moved out of state 6 months later. The last I heard, through a mutual acquaintance, she was working in retail and had deleted all her social media. The final, surprising detail was that the boutique dream, the one that started this whole chain of entitlement, never happened. The big launch was permanently on hold. With the lawsuits resolved and my father in prison, the external noise faded. But the internal reconstruction was just beginning. The money from the sale of my parents' house, after debts were paid, left a small sum. My mother, in a move that stunned me, insisted it be split evenly between Jessica and me. Jessica cashed her check without a word. I used a part of mine for a down payment on a used, reliable car. The rest I put into a savings account. It felt like blood money, but it also felt like the first truly fair resource distribution in our family's history. My own life, the one I'd been building in that tiny apartment, began to stabilize. The intense anxiety that had driven me to send that fateful text didn't magically disappear, but it lost its terrifying power. I started seeing a therapist. I told her everything, the years of being the backup child, the secret keeping, the screenshot, the grenade I'd thrown back. She called what I did a boundary detonation. Sometimes, she said, when polite requests and quiet suffering fail, the only way to establish a new border is with an explosion. The cost is high, but the line is forever clear. I kept my job. I got a promotion. I made a few close friends who knew nothing about my family drama, and that was a gift. I dated, cautiously. I learned that not every relationship was a transaction, not every confidence would be used against me. My mother moved into a small apartment of her own. We have dinner every other Sunday. The conversations are sometimes stilted, often about safe topics like her work, my job, a movie we've seen. But the foundation is different. There is no pretense. There is no hierarchy. There is, for the first time, a mutual respect born from surviving the same shipwreck. She is not my best friend. She is my mother, and we are learning what that means after the fantasy has burned down. I visit my father once a month. It is not out of duty or love in any warm sense. It is because I refuse to let the story end with him as a monster in a cell. I need him to be a man who made terrible, cowardly choices. The visits are short. We talk about books. He's taken up gardening in the prison yard. He asks about my mother. He never asks about Jessica. He has never apologized for the screenshot, for the lifetime of favoritism that led to it. But he did, on one visit, say something that landed like a key turning in a long-locked door. "You were always the real one," he said, staring at his hands. "Jessica was a performance. You were a person. I think I was afraid of real. Performance is easy to control." It wasn't an excuse. It was a confession of a different kind. He was afraid of the authentic needs of a real daughter, so he poured everything into the one who only wanted an audience. It was the missing piece of the why. So this is the aftermath. A father in prison, a sister in self-imposed exile, a mother and a daughter building a fragile, honest connection from the ashes. And me, I am no longer the secret keeper. I am no longer the strong one. I am just a person who learned that some bridges need to be burned so you can see the horizon clearly. The single text I sent that night was an act of self-immolation. I set fire to my place in the family to escape the slow freeze of neglect. I didn't know it would burn the whole structure down. But here's the truth I carry out of the ashes. I would rather breathe free air in a wasteland I understand than suffocate slowly in a beautiful, poisoned garden. The secret is out. The silence is broken. And for the first time in my life, the quiet feels like peace, not loneliness. This story isn't really about a text message. It's about what happens when the currency of a family becomes secrets and silence, and someone decides to go bankrupt. We live in an age where our most vulnerable words can be captured, screenshot, and broadcast with a tap. The family group chat, meant for convenience, can become the town square for our private humiliations. The dynamic here, the favored child, the neglected one, the parent who manages relationships through manipulation, is an old story. But the tools are new. The speed is terrifying. A moment of weakness can be made public in seconds, and the retaliation can unravel decades in minutes. I've been asked if I regret it, if knowing the cost, the prison sentence, the lost family home, the estrangement, the sheer scorched earth aftermath, would make me take it back. My answer is no. Not because I'm proud of the destruction, but because I don't regret the truth. The structure that fell was rotten at its foundation. It was built on the quiet sacrifice of one child for the glorification of another, on the lie that love is a finite resource to be hoarded and strategically spent. My text message didn't collapse it. It was the final gust of wind against a house of cards that was always going to fall. For anyone watching this who recognizes the pattern, the role you've been assigned, the secrets you've been forced to hold, the way your pain is minimized while someone else's whims are celebrated, hear this. Your desire for a fair and honest connection is not a character flaw. It is not jealousy. It is the most basic human need. Setting a boundary, even one that sounds like an explosion, is not an act of war. It is an act of self-defense. Walking away from a toxic dynamic, even when it wears the face of family, is not a failure. It is a success. The success of choosing your own survival over your assigned role in someone else's story. The wreckage behind me is vast, but the path ahead is finally, unequivocally, my own. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever been the secret keeper or the afterthought, consider subscribing. We share narratives like this not to revel in the fallout, but to illuminate the patterns so many endure in silence. Your subscription tells the algorithm these stories matter, that beyond the drama, there's a need to understand the anatomy of betrayal and the hard-won path to peace. Thank you for listening. Remember, the strongest bridge you'll ever build is the one you construct away from a shore that was always eroding.